This is emergency steak from World War II. Real steak cost a lot of ration points, so this was her answer. A meatloaf molded into the shape of a T-bone steak.
Did you guys know that that's the shape of a T-bone steak? How is it the worst name food? I don't know, I'm scared. What the? Well, would you eat a fart? Would you eat a fart? Gamer girls are gonna have a great day for this one. Would you eat a fart? Why don't you just say you would drink bath water? You freak! I'm just kidding. I'm kidding!
These are the worst named food ever. They are called farts of Portugal.
Okay, but like, do they taste good?
Portuguese farts.
Portuguese
and yes,
farts!
that is the real name. They are sweet little meatballs from Tudor England, and ironically, they smell divine. They're made with lamb.
Would it be better if they called them? Would they? Would they be better that way?
Lamb, mace, pepper, clove, dried currants, and dates. But why, oh why, are they called farts?
Explain.
Well, apparently, 16th century Europeans loved fart jokes.
Oh,
They
yeah.
started off by naming these little...
You don't even have to go that far back. You can just talk to me and like literally any of my mods. Wait. I'm sorry. It's just so easy and fun. Sorry, Jace. I didn't mean to out you. Gold, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to out you. Listen, they're easy. They're funny. They're silly. I wouldn't say they're delicious, but you know, to each their own.
were puffed up with hot air, nuns' farts. What is with these people? Well, these meatballs don't have air in them, but they have the same shape, so they got the same immature naming treatment. Even worse, by the 17th century, a cookbook titled Le Cuisinier François, the forerunner to French haute cuisine, included a recipe for a sugared pastry called pète de putain, or farts of a...
Then there's your... There you go, duct tape! Ordered right on it! It's very specifically from a... it's only a not the putain. Not the... Listen, I wasn't there. I'm sorry, I know I always say I'm old, but I wasn't there in the 1700s.
This English recipe for farts of Portugal is from 1585 and is typical of the flavors that you'd find at the time. The savory, unctuous flavor of boiled lamb mixed with sweet fruit and the spices that we would associate with Christmas.
I'm sorry, that it looks kind of gnarly. I don't know. I liked the little puff. I liked the nun farts. These look a little unholy, though. I'm gonna be real.
Actually surprisingly good, especially when served with a little gravy, and especially when you do not think about their terrible name. Full recipe is up on YouTube or in the Tasting History Cookbook.
I love that.
Today I'm making on a shingle.
I think I regret my decision, and I think we're just gonna go back. Yeah, we're gonna Alt F4. We're gonna Alt F4 the stream. Yay! Name is awful, but it's good. You stop that. You stop lying to yourself. Can you eat it with a straight face? Can you eat this on a shingle?
To the U.S. troops in World War II. Now, the original recipe from the War Department's Book of Army Recipes from 1944 called it creamed dried beef, but the soldiers that ate it called it SOS, or on a shingle. It's made with dried or chipped beef that sort of smells like dog food.
I'll be real. Listen, when you gotta, why was I gonna say when you gotta go, you gotta go. When you gotta make something on the fly. This is getting worse.
But when it's cooked, it's actually not so bad. Just really salty.
I mean, it is called shit on a shingle. What do you want from me? My mind wandered.
You do need to soak it for about 20 minutes. Then you take some evaporated milk with water and heat it up while you prepare a roux of melted fat. I opted for butter and some flour. Then add the milk to that and eventually you'll get a pretty decent gravy. And as it thickens, you can add some pepper and then the chipped beef and you'll let it cook. Now this was the perfect military dish because basically everything in it has a long shelf life, especially if you opt for Crisco instead of butter. All these ingredients could easily be shipped across the world to the boys fighting on the front. And since during the war many soldiers went days on end eating nothing but canned rations, a meal like on a shingle, the shingle
I love the edit, like might as well just put a fart
being a piece of toast would actually be
I want a fart editor. Every time I say shit from now on, put a fart on it.
Welcome meal. Now, I haven't been eating canned rations, but I still ended up really liking this. The texture of the beef, I'm not gonna lie, is not great, but maybe some ground beef would be more pleasant. But the flavor itself was pretty good. So if you want to give this military recipe a try, you can go check it out on YouTube or at Tasting History.
I love how happy you look. So here's the thing, for me, I don't know if I would like ground beef, but like if you chopped that one up a lot finer, you know, kind of like ground beef. Anyways.
This is the original recipe for beef stroganoff from 1871.
Oh, okay. At least it's not called someone's fart or. Does anyone eat stroganoff regularly? I feel like it's a pretty bomb recipe. I'm gonna be real. Like it's just pasta and meat. Again.
Now, while this version comes a few decades before we see things like mushrooms, tomatoes, and even onions added to the dish, it still has plenty of flavor. Unlike modern versions, the beef is cut into cubes and then seasoned with allspice and salt before resting it in the fridge for a couple hours. And it's quite a bit.
Does allspice have like nutmeg and stuff like that? Cinnamon and cloves? Nice.
Of allspice, or what the 19th century Russians called English pepper. Then the meat is fried in butter until it's nice and brown, and it smells so good. Now, beef stroganoff was named after the Stroganov family, though exactly which member is unclear. But most likely, it was the dashing Pavel Alexandrovich Stroganov.
Okay, but like, if I was ever depicted by an artist for people to remember me forever, that's why they're kind of lucky that cameras and shit didn't exist, right? No one wants to see my Saturday zit. Okay, someone's painting me, they're gonna paint me smooth. Especially if I'm paying them. I want to be captured all cool and shit.
Sometime in the early 19th century, though some stories place it with the French chef of Alexander Grigorievich Stroganov. His name was Charles Brière, and whether he invented it or not, he definitely helped to popularize it in the 1890s. Now, once the meat is cooked, you prepare a sauce by making a roux of butter and flour, and then adding in beef stock, mustard, and pepper. The mustard is a spicy mustard called sarepska, but any spicy mustard will work.
That looks delicious.
Today, this saucy meat is often served with noodles, rice, or fried potatoes, and this version would
really
taste good with that, but it doesn't actually make any mention of that, so I ate it plain, and it is really good. The allspice makes it quite different from the modern version, but it adds a wonderful flavor. It's delicious. YouTube,
that does look pretty
tasting
good.
history.
I'm very basic, and I'm not someone who's the biggest fan of bread. I don't know, bread just fills me up way too fast. So I usually, even if something has bread in it, it's very atypical for me, like a burger. If I make it at home, I'm probably not putting a bun on it.
This is the original spaghetti sauce of Chef Boyardee, back when he still spelled it Boyardee.
Oh, may I come in?
What?
I am Chef Boyardee.
That's right, Chef Hector Boyardee was a...
That's so cute! I'm sorry, but like seeing original footage for stuff is just so cute! Hello, I'm Chef Boyardee.
Person, and this is his recipe from the 1930s, shortly after he moved from Italy to open a restaurant in 1924 in Cleveland, Ohio. Italian food was actually pretty new to Cleveland at the time, so something as simple as spaghetti with tomato sauce blew people's minds. This sauce is relatively simple. It starts with fresh tomatoes that are turned into a kind of a watery sauce, and then this is mixed with onions, carrots, basil, ground beef, and mushrooms, and simmered for about 40 minutes or until it's nice and thick. Then you boil some spaghetti and toss it with butter and Parmesan cheese and serve it up with the sauce with more Parmesan.
It's beautiful.
Tell ya, it may be Chef Boyardee, but this is a far cry from what you're going to get in a can. The recipe is so delicious and easy to make that it's not only one of my favorite recipes that I've ever made on Tasting History, but I even make it when I'm not filming.
If something is quick and easy, then it's gonna be a win in most households, okay? I'm gonna be real, in college, that was one of the biggest things that I would eat all the time.
This is a medieval breakfast dish called sopes dorées, or golden sops.
Did I see the word cinnamon? Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay, this is when I would eat bread exclusively. Just saying.
Cinnamon toast, but with a hint of wine. The spice mixture in
Get a little tipsy on this breakfast.
the dish is called poudre douce, or sweet powders, and there was no one recipe for it. Every cook had their own version, but it usually was some sort of
yellow? Is that like
combination of
turmeric?
sugar, ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and mace, which is the outer part of a nutmeg. All these spices had to come from the Far East and were incredibly expensive in medieval Europe. Also, instead of regular milk, the recipe calls for almond milk, an oddly popular ingredient in Middle Ages, though this almond milk was made with wine, which is then simmered with saffron, sugar, and salt. A person's breakfast in the Middle Ages could...
Saffron? You might as well sell a kidney. Is that the one I'm thinking of? Is saffron the one that's insanely expensive nowadays? It's saffron ain't cheap. Yeah.
Widely depending on who, when, and where you were. Even this one kind of dish, sops, had many versions. Most people wouldn't have had access to the expensive spices, so their breakfast would have just been some bread softened in wine or ale. But there are other versions that use different spices, and some that use eggs or even fried onions for flavors. More of a savory breakfast than this version. So once the almond milk has thickened, you drizzle a bit of wine over some toasted bread, and then pour the almond milk around it with a little on top, and sprinkle the whole thing with the poudre douce. It's quite tasty, though I I think it's imperative you go easy on the sprinkle of wine or else it might be overpowered. But as it is, it's essentially a slightly boozy version of Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I'm so down. I want to try that.
This is medieval almond milk made with wine. And many people think of almond milk as a modern drink, but it was actually all the rage in medieval Europe. This recipe, which comes from 1450, tells you to take raw almonds and grind them in a mortar. Basically the same process as you do today, though today a blender makes the process much faster. Where it differs from the modern version is that instead of water, it says to temper them with wine and draw them
any excuse back in the day to use wine. Let's go, baby.
Through a strainer. That is, mix the almonds with some wine and pass it through a fine cloth. Now, not all medieval almond milk used wine. Some used water, and still others used ale or broth. Now, why almond milk was so popular?
Using broth feels like it would be insanely, well, I was going to say brothy because I'm obviously an intellect. It feels savory and weird.
Popular in the Middle Ages was because a good portion of the year were fasting days, when you couldn't have meat or dairy. For the 40 days of Lent, every Friday, and numerous other fasting days, almond milk was the go-to dairy alternative, at least for the wealthy, because almond milk was not cheap. And this version, made with wine, would have been even more expensive. Frankly, it's best used as an ingredient in cooking because the taste is odd. Like if you mixed almond milk and wine. Not much of a shocker.
It tastes weird. Like wine and almond milk. Whoa!
This is a 100-year-old recipe for Hungarian goulash. Now, the most important thing about making goulash is to cook the meat very slowly until nearly all of the liquid that comes out has evaporated. This is how it was originally made by the Magyar herdsmen of 9th century Hungary. They were called goulash, which is where the soup gets its name. Now, one ingredient that is key to goulash today is paprika, but that didn't show up until much later. It was in the 16th century when the Ottomans brought the New World ingredient of chili peppers to Hungary after conquering and occupying the country. And these peppers were dried, and then once crushed, they had paprika. Though it doesn't seem it actually was added to goulash until the 18th or even 19th century. But today, it's a must-have. I recently visited Hungary on a river cruise down the Danube with Alma Waterways, and I swear, nearly every savory dish that I had tasted of paprika, and I am totally fine with that. Now, this goulash is very simple, but the flavor is outstanding. It is a comforting Hungarian soup for any time of year.
Wow, I'm a sucker for stews. Stews are so nice.
This is how hot chocolate was made 300 years ago.
Oh my god! It's so thick!
The recipe has you whisk together sugar, cinnamon, cardamom, and the cocoa nibs. Then this is all ground by hand, or if you don't want to spend all day grinding, you can put it in a food processor with some vanilla.
Amazing.
Even then, it'll still take 10 to 15 minutes to get all ground up, and the whole thing turns into something like a gritty paste. This paste is then formed into
oh my god, just eat that straight up and it's like a brownie.
A cake, which after it cools will be hard as a rock. Then you heat some milk on the stove, chop off a few small pieces of the chocolate, and whisk it into the hot milk. The first chocolate house that served this kind of drink opened in London in 1657, and it remained a popular drink of men and women throughout much of the 18th century, though as coffee became more popular with men, some people started to consider chocolate to be a woman's drink. But that is just silly because
they're
hot
just
chocolate
missing
is delicious.
out.
Now once the chocolate is fully melted, you can pour it into a cup and sip.
God,
I actually
it's
use
beautiful.
this cool chocolate pot from the
Oh my god, that cup, I just noticed. That cup has legs. That's hot.
1700s, but that's because I'm a nerd. This 300-year-old style of hot chocolate is so much richer and decadent than the modern version, and the full recipe is up on YouTube or on tastinghistory.com.
I love it.
This is emergency steak from World War II. In 1943, Betty Crocker put out a cookbook to help the homemakers of America navigate wartime rationing. Real steak cost a lot of ration points, so this was her answer. A meatloaf molded into the shape of a T-bone steak.
Did you guys know that that's the shape of a T-bone steak?
It's made up of ground beef with salt, pepper, onion, crushed Wheaties cereal, and milk. Now, Wheaties may seem like an unusual addition to meatloaf, but it makes sense when you know that both Wheaties and the character of Betty Crocker were owned by General Mills. Yeah, Betty Crocker was not a real person.
How dare they? How dare they? They lied to us! I'm okay with this as long as it's good.
But her recipes were helpful all the same. Many of her wartime recipes replace hard-to-come-by ingredients like eggs, sugar, butter, and quality cuts of meat, hence the ground beef. So once you've sculpted your steak into a T-bone-shaped masterpiece...
Stop shaping it! I can't!
Harder than it looks, you broil it, carefully turning it once, and then your substitute steak is ready. It actually has a surprising amount of flavor, maybe because of the Wheaties, I don't know, but it's certainly not a T-bone steak. But I think it'd be a welcome meal during wartime.
They got really creative, and it's kind of crazy that some of the things Still tastes good nowadays. There's one I really, I swear, I bought all the ingredients. I meant to try it. And that's mock apple pie. And that comes from the desire and need to have apple pie for someone who can't ingest apples. And I'm kicking myself because some people say it actually tastes pretty good. And I'm kind of jealous. And I need to find out how to make it and try it again.
French onion soup from 6.
I used to have friends that were so obsessed with French onion soup. It's just basically onions and cream. Like, how can you go wrong?
1651. It's a bit different from the modern version, but it still relies on the deliciousness of caramelized onions. Cook them very slowly in lots of butter for about 45 minutes.
Does anyone actually caramelize their onions for 45 minutes? I ain't got 45 minutes is the entire meal, dude. The entire meal duration. What? Okay, I'm kind of happy that I can't tolerate onions. I have IBS and onions and garlic destroy me. Dude, y'all are sitting on here for 45. That's dedication. That's, you know what's good. What is go? I feel like I'm going crazy.
Until they are a nice deep brown.
45
While onion soups
just
date back
feels
to ancient times, it's the French version that's become famous today. It was said to be the favorite of King Louis XV, and one story even says that he invented it himself after a hunting trip. Of course, since he didn't even dress himself, I don't see the king toiling away.
I was gonna say, sure, you did, bud. You're probably like, oh my god, this tastes really good. We're naming it after me. Send the chef away, exile them. We're naming it after moi.
In the kitchen to make a soup. Also, as this recipe predates Louis by 75 years, we can safely declare the tale debunked. Now, where this onion soup really differs from the modern version is that instead of the onions simmering in broth, they're simmered in milk. It's also missing the signature Gruyere cheese because that wouldn't become popular until the early 20th century. Now, it does have toasted baguette, but it sits at the bottom of the bowl while you pour the soup over it. It's an incredibly simple recipe, but the flavors are so rich and complex that I would easily eat the whole pot.
This is called garum. It is a fermented fish sauce that was really popular in ancient Rome.
I do like that he did a fish-shaped bottle. That's really cute.
And I decided to actually make some here at my own house, knowing that there used to be laws about how close it could be made to population centers because it smelled so bad. But despite my neighbors, I used an ancient recipe from a tree.
Oh no, is this like, how is it pronounced? Strumming thing? It's that fish in a can? Were you supposed to open it underwater? Some people were telling me. Oh god, why?
Treatise called the Geoponica to make this most prized ingredient of ancient Rome. I started with 8 pounds of mackerel and 1 pound of salt. Chopped up the mackerel, rubbed in the salt, and then put it into a jar and set it out in the sun for 2 months.
Does health and safety know about this?
That's basically long enough for the enzymes in the digestive tract of the fish to start digesting itself. By the end of 2 months, it was pretty...
Oh god! Oh man! Dude, that looks illegal! That looks like freaking motor oil!
Pretty much 90% liquid, and so I decided to start straining it. Oh my god, it smelled so bad. I strained it through a few different things, some were better than others, but it turns out that the muslin worked best.
The things that people do for flavor. Ugh, every day we stray further from God!
I was shocked that this brown sludge had turned into a clear amber-colored liquid. It really is very pungent and very salty. You're supposed to cook with it, and so maybe in my next video, I'll cook with it. This is...
And he was never seen again.
This is what lasagna looked like in medieval Italy.
What?
The recipe comes from...
It looks like the giant raviolis. Cute!
Liber de Coquina, or the Book of Cooking, written around the year 1300, and it differs quite a lot from the modern version. First off, there were no tomatoes, since those wouldn't show up in Europe for about 200 years.
Yeah, I've always heard the history of tomatoes is really crazy. Like, I think at first people were very doubtful and worried about it because they thought it was poisonous, and I think it does have a lot of solanine in it, which is not good for your body, especially if you're autoimmune like me.
Also, the pasta is leavened with yeast like bread dough, and then it's rolled out and cut into squares before being boiled, which is like the modern version. But where it really differs are the flavors. Without tomato sauce, the medieval cook relied on precious spices like peppery grains of paradise from Africa, and then ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove from Asia. Flavors that today we would associate with pumpkin pie, not lasagna. It starts to resemble modern lasagna again as it's layered with freshly grated cheese. I use Parmesan as it would have been around at the time. But even with the cheese, the flavors here are wildly different from a modern lasagna, as is
Sounds
how you
amazing.
eat it, with a stick. The recipe specifically calls for it to be eaten with a wooden skewer since forks were just starting to become a thing in Italy. Full recipe, skewer and all, is in the Tasting History Cookbook. This is an ancient Roman dish called Parthian chicken. I love making this dish, though there's an issue because one of the ingredients, silphium, was actually eaten into extinction by the reign of the Emperor Nero. Luckily, the Romans found an alternative called asafoetida, or stinking gum, so called because it stinks. It smells like rotting garlic, at least until you cook it, and then it tastes quite pleasant, like a savory onion or leek. The ingredient grew far to the east of Rome in the Parthian Empire, hence the name Parthian chicken, though the Romans and Parthians didn't always get along, partly because the
use anything that smells stinky.
Parthians controlled part of the Silk Road between China and Rome, and nobody likes a middleman. But everyone likes Parthian chicken. The chicken itself is succulent, and between the asafoetida and the garum, that is fermented fish sauce, this dish has the savory and rather unique
asking for
flavors
some
of
ancient stuff,
Rome.
bud.
Full recipe is up on YouTube or in the Tasting History Cookbook.
That was my first time ever seeing Tasting History. That was awesome. A lot of the things still stick well, except for the last few where you gotta ferment fish for like months. Never. You couldn't pay me enough for that. I ain't doing it. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. If you had a good time, don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to this month's patrons. You guys are seriously the best. If anyone else would like to be
immortalized
into this video, please consider checking out my Patreon, and here are my other socials. Thank you, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.